Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.
It's Thursday, July 20th. This is The Gateway. I'm Wayne Pratt. Madison County officials noticed a trend a couple of years ago. The number of Missouri residents committing crime in the Metro East County had doubled.
We felt like the criminals understood if they could get back across the river, the justice system would have a harder time dealing with them. And we wanted to make sure that we did whatever we could to counteract that.
Coming up, St. Louis Public Radio's Will Bauer examines the trend and why the county started a task force to address it. St. Louis Circuit Attorney Gabriel Gore says partnerships have been enabled to stabilize the office in his first 6 weeks on the job. St. Louis Public Radio's Rachel Littman has more.
When Gore took over for Kim Gardner on May 30th, there were just 21 full-time attorneys in the office. All of them have stuck around, and Gore has hired 14 more. In order to keep cases moving until he could make those hires, Gore relied on prosecutors from other counties in the St. Louis region to issue charges and handle early court appearances. There are also 14 assistant U.S. attorneys helping with homicide cases alongside private sector attorneys.
This is exactly the type of collaboration that I knew would be necessary to begin rebuilding the circuit attorney's office.
Gore says the cooperative effort means there are 2,500 fewer cases waiting for charges. He says the office is still working to reduce homicide caseloads. I'm Rachel Littman, St. Louis Public Radio.
The Francis Howell School Board is on the verge of rescinding an anti-racism resolution approved 3 years ago. The Post-Dispatch reports the board is expected to vote this evening on revoking resolutions 75 days after members did not sign off on them or vote to adopt them. Only 2 current board members were serving when the anti-racism resolution was approved. The 5 others were elected this past April and last year. The rescind proposal describes resolutions as, quote, a reflection on a moment in time. The newspaper reports other resolutions would be affected, including one from 6 years ago calling on lawmakers to reject charter school expansion throughout Missouri. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul has joined his Democratic peers in countering a letter sent by Republican attorneys general to Fortune 100 companies. Mawa Iqbal has more.
The 13 Republicans warned the CEOs of the nation's largest companies against using race-based preferences in hiring and promotions. In their letter, the AG said treating people differently because of the color of their skin is unlawful and wrong. But Raoul says diversity is needed in corporate America.
Diversity initiatives in the workplace are legal, ethically responsible, and more important than ever in addressing these systemic barriers.
The Democrats sent their own letter to the CEOs saying these initiatives also reduce the risk of legal claims of discrimination. This comes after the U.S. Supreme Court in late June struck down affirmative action in college admissions. I'm Mawa Iqbal.
Missouri's Andrew Bailey is one of the attorneys general who signed that original letter. Former St. Louis Public Schools Superintendent Kelvin Adams is the new president and CEO of the St. Louis Community Foundation. He will succeed interim president Gary Dollar, who has been at the helm since this year's retirement of Amelia Bond. The organization launched a national search and decided on Adams, who spent 14 years as the superintendent of St. Louis Public Schools. He retired from the district late last year. Adams starts with the Community Foundation August 7th. St. Louis cultural organizations that stage performances and other outdoor events are taking steps to protect visitors and staff from the extreme weather that has become increasingly common. St. Louis Public Radio's Jeremy Goodwin reports.
As air quality warnings grow more frequent and climate change contributes to more storms, heat, and humidity, ushers at Busch Stadium watch fans for signs of heat stroke. Leaders at the St. Louis Zoo give workers cooling towels and packets of electrolytes to mix with water. St. Louis Shakespeare Festival Artistic Director Tom Ridgely says he started tracking air quality this year. If it's unsafe, the show won't go on.
Before last year, the only policy we ever had was a rain policy. And now we have a heat policy and we have an air quality policy. And those are things that just had never arisen before.
Scientists say climate change will drive a particularly large jump in St. Louis of extremely hot days in coming decades. I'm Jeremy Goodwin, St. Louis Public Radio.
A second Northwoods police officer has been charged in the alleged beating of a suspect on July 4th. Police have arrested 51-year-old Michael Hill. He faces a single count of kidnapping. Officer Samuel Davis has also been arrested. A suspect at a Walgreens on Natural Bridge was taken into custody, then driven to nearby Kinloch, where he was allegedly beaten. Hill was Davis's supervising officer. He is accused of going into the store after the arrest and telling an employee what would happen to the victim, along with not turning on his body camera or informing dispatchers. Neither officer wrote a report. Hill remains in jail on $100,000 bond. He is still employed by Northwoods as the department investigates the new charges. Davis no longer works for the department. Madison County created its Cross River Crime Task Force in 2021. The goal of the group was to curb the number of Missouri residents traveling to the Metro East County to commit crime. St. Louis Public Radio's Will Bauer checks in on the trend and the task force.
Over the last 10 years, the number of Missouri residents convicted of felonies in Madison County has doubled. That's from about 5% to 10% of the total. And it's that trend that led Tom Hain, the state's attorney in Madison County, to create the task force.
We felt like the criminals understood if they could get back across the river, the justice system would have a harder time dealing with them. And we wanted to make sure that we did whatever we could to counteract that.
Madison County law enforcement lose the ability to make an arrest if a criminal can sneak back across to Missouri. To meet its goal, police are hoping to catch the criminals on the east side of the Mississippi, or better yet, prevent the crimes in the first place. Major Nick Novosich of the Granite City Police Department now leads the task force.
We want them to know that if they come over here, they don't have that same luxury. That we're not going to let them just do whatever they want. They come over here, we're going to hammer them. We're going to go after them, and we're going to prosecute them.
Novosich's group is all volunteer. It's made of 14 officers in 10 departments across the county. At the most basic level, Novosich says the team deploys on random nights with license plate readers to look out for outstanding warrants and big traffic violations.
I'm not talking about soccer moms running stop signs. I'm talking about people with guns, people with drugs, people who will kidnap people who will carjack people. That is what this unit is geared towards finding.
The type of crimes and what portion they make up of the whole is kind of a mixed bag. For example, Madison County totaled 20 murders 4 years ago. Missourians committed 7 of them. Last year, that same stat stood at just 1 of 12. The rest of the years fell somewhere in between. Because there are so few murders in the county, one big or small year could completely throw off any trend, making it hard to conclude much from it. But vehicle thefts are a little easier to understand. The entire region has seen a spike in this category. In Madison County, they've nearly doubled since 2016. The percentage of Missouri residents stealing cars has grown from 17 to 26. All that being said, Missourians are responsible for just a portion of overall felonies.
So while that percentage has grown over time, it still remains quite small.
That's Richard Rosenfeld, a University of Missouri St. Louis criminologist. He studies crime trends and crime control policy. In his eyes, the higher population on the Missouri side of the Mississippi River can help explain the numbers.
I don't see it as a major problem. I'm not suggesting that a task force couldn't be useful. That's something for Madison County law enforcement and other public officials to decide.
Another criminologist, Dennis Maris of Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, says regional collaborations make sense given the current trends.
Does it solve all problems? Of course it doesn't, and I think everybody realizes that. But can it reduce things? Absolutely. Can it hold offenders accountable? Absolutely.
The Cross River Crime Task Force does not regularly work with Missouri law enforcement, but all involved with the task force and the criminologist agree crime doesn't stop at the river. In Maris's eyes, the rise in vehicle thefts across the region over the past couple years could help explain why some other crimes continue to rise in Madison County.
Not having a vehicle really limits where you can do crime. But if all of a sudden you have this large reservoir of vehicles you can basically borrow, that opens up a lot of new opportunities to do crime with if you want.
Maris also points out highways are two-way streets. Madison County residents will commit crime in St. Louis, and vice versa. And that's one of the reasons why Hain, the state's attorney, wants to build up a strong response to the trend. He feels criminals have innovated. Law enforcement, he says, should do the same.
If there's a persistent perception that you can commit a crime and get away with it, that will cause a downward spiral of criminality. And we want to make absolutely sure we nip this in the bud and prevent that spiral from happening in Madison County.
A good sign for Hain. The percentage of Missouri residents committing murder and vehicle theft did trickle downward from 2021 to 22. It's uncertain whether that will continue in 23. In Madison County, I'm Will Bauer, St. Louis Public Radio.
Our Fred Ehrlich and Brian Moline edited that report. I am out for a couple of days. Rachel Littman will be at the helm of this weekday extravaganza tomorrow. Ashley Lisenby is the news director of St. Louis Public Radio, a listener-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis. Music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. I'm Wayne Pratt.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.